Hello, runners, and welcome to another episode of I Run for Ultras podcast. I'm Shanali, and I'm super stoked to introduce you to our next guest today. Anna Frost, or Frosty as she likes to call herself, is a woman with many passions, and she has managed to combine two of those passions, running and traveling, and turned it into a very successful running career. She has not only won but also set records at some amazing races. Now, I want to get the list right because it's long and impressive to say the least. She has won and set records at the TNF 50 Mile Championship, Table Mountain Challenge in South Africa, Everest Marathon, TransVulcania, Bear 100, Nolans 14, Snowman Trek, to name a few. In addition to this, she's also won some amazing prestigious races. Just the partial list, let me read this out to you. She has won the Coastal Challenge in Costa Rica, Hard Rock 100, Leadville Half Marathon, Speed Code 50 kilometers, Transrockies. I need to take a breath just reading the partial list, and she actually killed it at these races. So we're going to talk to Anna, who prides herself on being more than just a runner. She's a woman with many passions, and we'll talk to her about all of those passions and more. So let's get started. Hello, Anna. Welcome to I Run for Ultras podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Looks like a beautiful sunny day there.
It is. It's wonderful and summery and a bit windy, but still fun to be out there playing.
Absolutely. So, Anna, we know that, you are more than just a runner, but what a running career you have had, right? So that's how we
Yeah.
know you. But if I was to ask you, who is Anna? Or may I call you Frosty?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if I was to say, who is Frosty, how would you describe yourself?
Um, well, I'm just me. I think we all just see ourselves as ourselves. Um, I have had an amazing and long career, and it's not all due to me, myself, and I. It's definitely been a huge team effort from sponsors, from friends, from fellow runners, from family, people that are there, people that are afar. And I've just been really, really lucky that um, there's been open doors, and I've had the guts, I guess, and encouragement to take the opportunity to just grasp those opportunities, and it's led from one thing to the other. So I think if I had to put it down to a few words, it's been determined and driven, but also free-willed and excited for new challenges. So I've always sort of thought, okay, yeah, why not? Just say yes and see what happens.
So you've always had this competitive, challenging spirit where you were like, yeah, I'm up for that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think once you're a competitive person, I think you're born it and you can't get rid of it. But it wasn't always about competitiveness. Have always had a passion for travel, and um, so the beauty is that running is fantastic for travel because it's an easy way to explore the area even more, and I think it allows you to move to places that maybe you've never even seen on a map or not even heard of, because there's running races in all sorts of random places now. So, yeah, I think it's just been that I've been competitive, but also I've been really intrigued about what's out there.
And you talked about your support system, but before we even talk about your support system,
Mhm.
congratulations are in order. Of obviously,
Oh,
you're
thank you.
expecting. What is
Yeah.
that like, and do you still manage to run?
Yeah, obviously it's a huge change. This is our first baby, so I've been absolutely intrigued about what the body is capable of, and how it changes, and everything that the body and mind has to go through to prepare for having a baby. And obviously that's going to be life changing. At this point, I'm still just pregnant, so it's fun and interesting, but I haven't quite got the full, like, oh my gosh, this is life changing yet. Um, and yeah, for running, I mean, I can still run now. It's just not as comfortable, and I'm happy doing weights at a gym and doing yoga, and walking feels really great, and paddleboarding and kayaking. So at this point, there's not really a need for me to continue running when it's feeling a bit uncomfortable and a bit inefficient. So yeah, I've just enjoyed having the summer and really playing in the outdoors.
That's wonderful to hear. And you've talked about how you're preparing for this new role in life, and that's
Mm.
beautiful. But from what I understand of your life, you have been very adaptive, and you are able to roll with the changes and go with it. And do you think that has really helped you in your life and your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't had a house or a home for 15 years. I just travel around with a backpack, which is wonderful, but like anything, the novelty wears off, and definitely get desperate for having somewhere just to unpack
A home
sometimes.
base.
And exactly, yeah. So I think having the baby will bring that a little bit more, but we're still intending to travel quite a lot because we have our Trail Run Adventures business, which is traveling with people around the world. So um, not only are we doing races and events, which I will hope to continue to do, now we're also doing our tours. So um, I'm hoping that the little baby will be happy enough to travel as well. Again, it's something that we'll wait and see how she feels when she comes out into the big wide world, and if she wants to travel as well.
Oh, I have a feeling she will. I have a feeling she'll be born with the traveling bug. But that was gonna
I
you
hope
you touched
so.
upon something that was going to be my next question. Is competitive running behind you, or do you see a potential future in it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, once you're competitive, it's very hard to not be competitive again. Um, but I've had 15 years of an incredible racing career of huge highs and huge lows, and injuries and wins and DNFs, and huge experiences out in the mountains of bonks. And I'm really content and satisfied with the career that I have had, but there's still so many things I would love to do. There's so many races, there's so many travels, there's so many events that, keep popping up and keep popping up. So
If you were to
there's
name
just,
a few, what are some
right.
of the races you
Um,
want to compete in, and what are some of the places that you haven't traveled to that you want to travel to?
yeah, so I went to La Reunion quite a few years ago now, and they had the Diagonal de Fou race there, the 105 mile or 110-mile race. And that's always been something I thought would be absolutely fabulous to do. So maybe I would go back, and I don't know if I would be ultra competitive, but everything I do tends to be like I want to do it the best I very can. So I don't know if I'd be able to just cruise along, and saying that 100 miles, no matter how you do it, whether you do it for fun or if you do it competitively, it's still very, very hard, and it still takes a lot of commitment and determination and heart to get through that. So that's just one of them. There's the Trans Marathon, which is a stage race across the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. I really love stage races, and I find them a really great way to see an area, get to know the locals and the organisers and the fellow racers. So there's so many stage races around the world as
Yeah,
well.
and they're a more
Uh,
immersive experience in general.
yeah, yeah. And then there's just so many races in New Zealand that I haven't done before as well, because I've always been traveling. So, yeah, I think um, I will come back to racing, but just maybe not at a super, super high level.
So, to get a little better understanding of you, Frosty, let's go back into your past. What was your childhood like, and the what are some of the memories that you can share with us that you feel shaped who you are today?
Yeah, well, I was sort of born into travel. My mum and dad traveled a lot, and so they encouraged that, and that was always. I always go back to that. That I think probably without them encouraging me just to go and explore and see what was out there, then I probably wouldn't have spent the last 15 years doing that. Um, so that was definitely it. But we grew up camping and hiking in the mountains and staying at overnight huts up in the mountains and fishing and living in a bus. So as we were growing up, my family were very outdoors, and then all through school, I was really encouraged by different teachers and friends at school, and my sister to play all the sports and do all the sports, and I just loved trying new things. So I did absolutely everything I could find at school. So I did triathlon and athletics, and then cross country running and rowing and touch rugby. So um, yeah, I was just very active, and my main sport was field hockey.
Yes.
So I was playing that for like 4 different teams, and that's, I think hockey, I think team sports in general are an amazing thing for, well, for everyone, but especially growing up, because they really teach you life skills of discipline, of teamwork, of working within a small community within the sport. So I owe a lot to my hockey career as well as my fitness and strength, because there's nothing like getting some good quads and a good butt out of field hockey. So yeah, I owe a lot to that. Um, yeah, so I think it was really just that I had a lot of people and a lot of schooling throughout my career that were very supportive and encouraging of doing lots of different things.
Yeah, field hockey is actually the national sport of India, where I come from. So
Yeah,
I know,
exactly.
and I know what a tough sport it is. But I
It
have to
is.
say, interestingly enough, even in our country, it's the women's field hockey that's more competitive, and
Yeah,
they perform better. And I believe
yeah.
that's a common thing. But we'll talk about female athletes later, because there's so much I want
Mhm.
to talk to you about.
Okay.
You talked about. Field hockey, and how working in that team environment and training has a big role to play in forming how you think and train.
Mhm.
What are some of those qualities that you attribute that you could adapt into running? Because some people would look at it and say, oh, two are very different sports.
Yeah.
How do you learn from field hockey, and how do you apply that to running, which some people consider
Okay.
it a solo sport, but that it's actually a very community sport.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to being competitive and working with the people around you to be competitive. I feel like that's why running is such an amazing sport, because you're competing against other people, but also you don't want them to break an ankle. You don't want them to have a bad day. All the times that I've competed, um, there's been, this really great friendship within the race. We've waited for each other, we've helped each other, we've, you know given each other encouragement when you can see someone's dropping off behind you, and said, come on, let's go, let's get this done. And that the strongest person on the day is going to win. But it takes everyone that's out there on the field, on the hockey field or on the trail, to help each other out to get there. And yeah, lots of people think that trail running is a solo sport, and in the end, everything you do is solo, because you still have to work through your own mental capacity to achieve whatever you're there. A race, it wouldn't be a race if there wasn't the race directors, the volunteers, the track markers, and everyone else around you, because
And
otherwise,
even the
if
families and friends and people who show up to
exactly,
cheer you.
yeah, if it wasn't for all of them, you'd just be on a run on your own anyway. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a huge team sport. And then when you have your own teammates and you have your sponsors, or like we had for so many years with our shoe designers and everyone, everyone is working together to make the perfect product, or to make you have the perfect race.
And for your performance to get better, right? Awesome.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so I want to talk to you. I know you've talked about this before, but I would love to hear about Italy, and when you had that epiphany that this is, you can take two of your passions and combine it and
Mm,
make something of it. Talk to us a
mhm.
little about that.
Yeah, so Italy was not my first travel, but my first travel
For
for a
running?
race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I it was my second ever mountain running race I had done, and it was at the World Championship. So obviously I was totally out of my comfort zone, totally out of my element,
What were
and
your expectations going into it?
I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what it was going to be like. I'd never been to something of a world standard like that. Um, and so I was just pretty much in shock the whole time, shock at what the course was like. It was so steep, it was so mountainous. Um, Shock at what all the other people looked like and how they were running and how they were training and what was their warm-ups like and what were they eating, and it was just everything. And I didn't have a very particularly great race. I was too busy like looking around at everything and kind of in shock of what was going on out there. But um, I realized that from meeting other people there, I realized that this was something that people did. They followed this um, Grand Prix mountain running circuit around the world, and you would get points, and then there was a world championship, and there was races nearly every weekend all around, or every twice a weekend, all around Europe on these fabulous mountains. And you'd finish at the top, and everyone would be there with their families and having the prize giving up there, and then everyone would jog back to the cars or whatever. Um, and I saw that people were traveling by train from race to race and camping, running together during the week and then racing together in the weekend. And I was just dragged in and lured to it, and couldn't really say no after that.
You were hooked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you 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 have performed so amazingly in your 15 years, but you've also been very open about talking about hitting rock bottom. So, and
Mhm.
a lot of people, that's the hurdle. Like, how do you get past those challenges? What are some of the biggest? What is rock bottom for you, and what are some of the biggest challenges, physical and mental?
Yeah, obviously, injury is a huge physical problem. And that's also like fatigue when you've trained too hard or over raced or haven't recovered well from training or racing. Um, and it's, I always say to people, like, there's not enough books, or there's not enough things on the internet that you can read to prevent you from getting injured. You have to listen to your own body, and you can have a coach and they can help guide you through it. But in the end, if you don't tell your coach exactly how you feel, if you're not listening to exactly how you feel in your training, you're going to push through an injury or a niggle that's going to turn to something worse. And um, you have to be logical about what you're doing, and it's really hard now because we see so many athletes going from race to race to race to race, or not just athletes, but many people do
People.
it. um, but they can handle it. Like, they've figured, okay, my body can handle doing 5 100 mile races in a year, and that's okay for them if that works for them. But for me, I know that that doesn't work, and I don't want to do that to myself. So um, I know it's possible. I know people can do it, but you have to find what your limit is or what your line is before you physically get fatigued. And then mentally, I also think it's about a passion. If the passion is not there for the racing that you're doing or the running that you're doing, it turns into a chore. It turns into something that you're doing for someone else, not for yourself. You're doing it for a trend, or you're doing it for your coach, or because your friends are doing it, or your fellow runners are doing it. But actually, your heart's not in it. And I think that's when we don't listen to ourselves. We don't take the breaks that we need. We don't really focus on doing the things that we need as our individual bodies. So, and it is hard because how do you know how much is too much? Um,
Well,
and and I think you almost have to go there to find out where the line is. So I think that's the biggest problem for most runners, or athletes in general. You don't know until you push.
Yeah. But would you say time and experience is the best educator as far as figuring out what your limitations are and how to basically read your own body?
Absolutely. I think running is about consistency, running is about patience.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's some people that come out of the woodworks and they like boom onto the scene, and I'm pretty sure that they won't last for 15 years. But yeah, if you want to really do it well and sensibly, then yeah, it takes time and it takes patience to slowly build into your training, or race once a year in a big, big race, and then give yourself a break. And if you feel good the next year, race twice. So, um, and I also think a big part of it is that we don't have to keep racing more and more distances. If you're happy doing a half marathon and you love that distance, you don't have to then go and do a 50K. You don't have to go and do a 100 mile just because that's what everyone's doing right now. If you like 21Ks, there's so many different ways to challenge yourself in a half marathon. You can travel, you can do it faster, you can go for a more hilly one or a more flat one. So, yeah, I think without having to put pressure on ourselves to see what's next and what's next, and then maybe push too hard and too fast, there's ways of challenging ourselves within what we already know.
And you touched upon a support system earlier. So what kind of a role do they play? Because and who are your support system? Because in addition to you listening to your body, I'm sure you have some people around you too who are like, Frosty, or
Yeah,
is this
yeah.
when should you rethink this? And how much heed do you give them?
Yeah, well, I when I started racing, like right back from Italy, I had a coach, and he was a very tough coach, but had results. So yeah, it was kind of, I learned everything I know about training through him. And then as I traveled more, it was just harder to stay with a coach because he didn't know where I was going or what facilities I had or what mountains I had to run on. But we have stayed in contact as a mentor. And um, I think, in terms of support network, it's everyone from the sponsors and the team manager to your teammates. Again, like I was saying before, to the shoe developers, to the bag development. Everyone talks to you a lot and sees you a lot and sees you racing and sees you training, and people realize what space you're in and how you're going there. And then I think importantly, listen to your friends and family, and your friends and family have to be strong enough to say to you, you look really tired and you're really grumpy, and maybe you shouldn't go for a run today, maybe you should just rest. So it's also hard to listen to those people and make many sacrifices as well, because it does take a lot of time for you, but also your family and friends. You can't always go out to whatever they're doing, or if you've got a 6-hour run in the weekend, that has to interfere with your whole family's or friends world. So yeah, that support network is
So
really,
how
really
do you
important.
strike that balance?
Um, Again, I think that's practice. You have to see what is acceptable for your family. Maybe your family is like, yeah, go and do your thing. We don't want to see you today. You're too grumpy if you don't. So, or they might say, you know what, it would be great if you could just stay home today. And you know what, it's one run. We get very hooked up on our training and on our running per day, but it doesn't really matter in the larger scheme of things if you're being patient and consistent. And that support crew, they're the ones that are going to pick you up when you're feeling down, or they're the ones that are going to be actually your support crew when you're doing that race. So you don't want to annoy them because they're going to give a whole day or potentially 2 days to you out running in the mountains and feeding you peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So um,
Yeah, you want them on your side.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you obviously you've collected you've talked to us a lot about gathering information over the years and learning from it. And now you also coach, I believe. How do you so would you say it's applicable, like you having all this information and pouring that into your coaching, how that works for you, and also what do you enjoy about coaching?
Well, I haven't actually started coaching yet. I intend to coach at some point, but for me, coaching is something that I really want to be 100% there for each athlete. And so far, I've found that with all the travel and now with the baby coming, I'm just not quite in 100% mode. Um, but I'm really looking forward to getting to a place where I can say, okay, I'm ready to coach and um, give back everything that I've learned in the sport to those people. I think the way that I would coach is going to be very different to a lot of other coaches. I'm definitely about feel. I'm definitely about where your heart is in terms of how it feels when you're training, but also your passion. And listening to yourself, I feel like I can give a structured program for sure, but a huge thing for me my entire career has been that I've been passionate about what I'm doing and I'm listening about what's happening as well. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I haven't started yet, so maybe in the next couple of months, then we'll start the
Amazing.
coaching. Yeah.
That'll be amazing. Well, if you weren't a runner, who would you
hmm
be?
Um, Gosh, so many things. There's so many things I would love to do. I love making jewelry, so maybe I would have followed a career in jewelry making. I always used to think being a professional surfer would have been really cool because you could travel and surf the nice, beautiful waves. So that could have been something. I studied physical education at university, so and also went to teachers college. So I taught PE for a couple of years, and I absolutely love teaching. And teaching PE is so much fun. So um, maybe that or a coach or yeah, there's just so many things it could be. So I don't know which one I would choose first.
So you're obviously a woman of many passions, and passion is a key word for you. Um,
Yeah.
uh, do you think that sometimes, when you get into the mode of competitiveness, if not with you, do you see that people tend to lose touch with their passion and get very stuck on, say, numbers and end game result based?
Yeah. Yeah. And I often say to people, maybe you could leave your watch at home for a couple of runs a week just because um, like you say, you can lose touch of why you're doing it in the first place. And for so many people, I know that when they go to trail running, they go there because it's free and it's quiet and it's peaceful and you're in nature and it feels fabulous to be in touch with your roots. Um, but then when we get a little bit more used to that, we forget about why we were there in the first place. And we all of a sudden have our watch on and our heart rate monitor on and we're measuring everything and putting it on Strava and checking how quick our segments were and all of those things. But um, it's very easy to lose touch. And so I often say, like, if you can leave your watch at home or don't worry about loading that up and log it in your diary for sure, like a 30-minute run on the trails, but try not to make it too much about the numbers and the stats. Make it more about, oh, yeah, I'm going to go and breathe and listen. And if I want to stop and take a photo, stop and take a photo. And if I want to stop and sit down and take 10 big breaths, I'm going to do that too.
Amazing. Well, um, if I was to ask you, what is your favorite terrain to run on? What would it be? What do you enjoy running in the
Um,
most?
Mountains, I think, is the best for me. Yeah. I love the mountains in Colorado, where I'm based half of the time. Just being able to see these huge mountains for miles and kind of pick your own safe route up there. And then once you get to the top, seeing, the rest of the world out in front of you is a pretty fantastic feeling.
And what would you say is the most challenging terrain for you to run on?
My weakness is probably my technical downhill, and it always has been. So it's something that I'm always um, trying to get better at and trying to push a little bit harder in my training. and always a thing where I lose time in races. So it's definitely my technical down.
Yeah. So, we're talking about training and, styles of training. Nutrition is a very important part of that as well. What's your nutrition philosophy? Because we hear so many different athletes who come from different schools of thought as far as
Hmm.
what works for them.
Hmm.
What is your nutrition style?
Yeah, my nutrition's not very important. I mean, it's very important to me, but I'm a terrible cook and I hate cooking. And because we travel so much, it's very hard to have a kitchen full of food that you can just quickly cook up or that or that's regular. So we go from all sorts of different cuisines all the time, which is fabulous, especially when other people are cooking because I hate it and terrible. I burn everything. So I end up eating a lot of salads and kind of ensembles of salads that have proteins and carbohydrates and veggies and fruits within them, because I can just throw it all together and it's nice and fresh, and
It's
that
easy and
seems to work.
healthy.
It's
It's
easy, yeah, and I can't burn it if I don't cook it. Um, so yeah, I tend to say that it's just I try for balance. So I'm not much of a meat eater, just because I don't like cooking it, um, and I'm quite conscious about the meat that I do eat, just because I have seen a lot of places that have, that you have the livestock that frighten me. So,
yeah.
yeah, I choose to be very conscious with my meat, and so I'm not eating a lot of meat. And then dairy, I don't eat so much just because I don't have milk in my coffee, or I don't have a lot of dairy, just yogurts. And in terms of when I'm traveling, it's more just experiencing the food as what the culture is, because that's part of travel for me, is enjoying their cuisine as well. Um, so yeah, and I still eat cakes and chocolate and everything else. I've always maintained a pretty good and healthy weight, and I feel like that's definitely owed to a longer career in running, that my body's been able to stay strong, just because it's been a healthy weight, and I've managed to kind of find that a higher fat, natural fat diet, so on avocados, seeds, and nuts and
Nuts.
olive oils, has definitely helped with that as well. And like full fat Greek yogurt, those sort of things, has really balanced a hormone level. And so I've been able to maintain a fairly healthy weight.
That's really wonderful to hear, because a lot of people don't realize that the food that you eat is medicine and actually prevents you from, getting sick a lot of the times. We get stuck in
Yeah,
the, healing the disease, but we don't work at keeping this temple that is our body healthy.
right,
Uh,
exactly.
you also spoke about being very conscious about where your meat comes from. So, and and everything that you've been saying, leads me to believe that you are overall a conscientious person who's mindful. um,
Mm-hmm.
do, obviously, when you're running and when you're going into these beautiful wilderness, there is also a sense of sadness a lot of the times. I know it's for me, because it's fleeting. It's such a delicate balance, and we tend to be leaving a very, very deep and strong footprint everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
that humanity goes. What do you think is
Mm-hmm.
the responsibility, or do you think it is the responsibility of athletes who do have a position where they can make an impact to speak up about it? And what are some of the issues that matter to you, that you feel like people need to pay more attention to?
Yeah, for sure. We see a lot of the athletes already talking about their environments and protecting that, within America, the national parks, all through France and Italy. I know there was keeping the trails public, or as many of them as public as they could. And so just the access to the trails is a huge thing for us, because
Mhm.
obviously without that access, um, we don't get to go and play. But I think the bigger impact for all of us is what we do while we're on those trails. So, are we being responsible? Are we taking our rubbish out? Are we thinking about where we're going for a poop in the bush. Are we just going straight on the side of the trail and leaving our paper? I mean, I've seen it, and it blows my mind that people in our sport or in our mountains can actually do that. So,
Yeah.
that's a huge responsibility that we all owe to our environment, because otherwise it's just not going to be there for anyone's pleasure. Um, and then for me, it's really important to choose a race that is also thinking about that. Many races are all about business, and I'm totally okay and happy for race directors to earn money, and they deserve to earn money out of organizing a race. But it's also their responsibility to give back to the community, to encourage the local people, to encourage the runners to come back and do some trail work on that area, or to give back to the local community that have been there supporting them. And so it's important for us to support races or boycott races that you don't think are being green, or they aren't thinking about the environment that they're in and using us to promote their race. So, as each individual, we should make that decision of what
speaks
is.
to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, we have talked about advocacy when it comes to the environment. I know there's another cause that's very near and dear to your heart. That is women women athletes. Talk to us about what you're seeing, because there are a lot of, like, we see more and more amazing female athletes starting to make a mark on the world arena, not just because they are women, but because they are seriously good athletes. So talk to me a little about what do you see the future of women in sports being, and what kind of a role do we have to play to to foster that?
I think it's all about equality, and there has been some amazing men in our sport also that have believed the same thing, and has therefore pushed the equality for women around the world. There's also many race directors that are still have their head in the sand and think that it's okay to pay women less for a race, or to encourage less women to enter, or all the things that we see almost daily in the sport of inequality. But more and more so we see in trail running that it's becoming more equal, and it's just important that we keep encouraging that within the race directors. More and more women are entering races and feeling confident about doing that, because there's more of a show of women in the sport. With that equality also comes the promotion and the talk of these women. So we're hearing about more and more, and that then obviously motivates other women to say, oh, I could do that too. So it's a really nice roundabout cycle. So I think it's moving in that right direction. We just have to keep encouraging it. And that encouragement, I think, comes from our young people. And it's all of us as role models, every single adult, to encourage those young people and encourage girls and boys, because without educating the boys, we can't educate the girls. So we have to educate the girls that, yes, this is something that you can do, and educate the boys that, yes, this is something you can do, and it is something that we're going to do together, and we'll compete together. These girls are going to train just as hard and race just as hard as you. So, go out there and get onto it and get training. So it's something that we all need to do.
Well, one of the rhetoric that's sold to us is that, it is harder for women to balance, life, family, and a career. What do you have to say about that rhetoric?
I mean, maybe in the olden days, but I don't think so anymore. I think women have just as many opportunities as men, and it's just how you drive your life. It's what you choose, and how in your own family, how you say, "I'm going out for a run today. Can you look after the baby?" Or yes, my family counts, or yes, my friends count, but I also need my life and my things as a woman. I'm speaking about now, um, and you just ask for it, and you say, I have as much right as anyone else does for this. So um, I think now it's not any harder for a man or a woman to do anything.
True. So that's why I guess this is where it comes in, because they say it's so important to surround yourself with the right people,
Hmm.
So I guess again it comes back to the support system and the people you're around who are like-minded and help you
Yeah.
foster. It's a give and take for everyone.
Yeah, and I think, when we started racing in the mountains, it wasn't a professional sport. There wasn't the hype of athletes as there is now. There was no social media around it. So we were doing it because we were passionate about it, and it was just our choice to go and do it. And it remains the same now. Like, you don't need to be a professional runner or a sponsored runner to go and run. You can still travel without being sponsored. You can still go and stay in a tent at the start line at many, many races and do a race without being sponsored. So, yeah, I think sometimes people that are choosing, oh, is this a career that I want to follow, don't think, well, okay, I just have to go out there and fight for it, because um, that's how you get things in life. You have to fight for it. And I'm not just talking about being a professional either. I'm talking about, if you want to go and do a race, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to fight for the time away from work or the time away from your family, or to get that entry into the race. And it shouldn't just be easy, because if it was easy, then what's the point in doing it? We do this because it's hard and
Yes.
it's a challenge.
And that's why more rewarding in the end.
Exactly.
You talked about sponsorship, and you were, of course, a Solomon sponsored athlete,
Mhm.
and you were integral in coming up with some athletic gear, and responsible for the research and development and developing some amazing athletic apparel. How much of a role do you think, or how much of a difference does it make in your performance at the end of the day? Having the right gear, and from back in the day when you started to now, it's not that much time in the grand scheme of things, but there's a lot of changes that have happened. So
Mhm.
talk to us about that, like just the gear aspect of it, things that aid a runner in performing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the lighter the gear, obviously it's much nicer. The more comfortable it is, the less chafing and pain you have in a race. Um, the fabric feel, how it performs, if it gets rid of the sweat or keeps you warm or keeps you cold. Um, sure, it all plays a huge role in how we perform. And there's a huge amount of development and research going in these companies for a better fabric and a better fit and a better feel. And it's really cool to see, the continuous development, and there will be forever, I'm sure. Um, so it was really fun to be part of that, to say, I want this to be like this, or that to be like that, and these shoes to be like this, and to then be able to go out and test that in the field was a really fantastic thing. So yeah, very fun part of being part of that sponsored runner. And also I'm still interested in always, finding how could the fabrics be more natural, how could we find a product that's friendlier for our environment, that's produced in a more friendly way, because that's something now that having plastic clothing, having plastic fabrics, isn't sustainable,
No.
and isn't good for our planet either. So for me, the movement towards having fabric that comes
Bamboo.
naturally,
Bamboo is like,
bamboo,
yes,
yeah, and then there's
hemp.
the sort of coconut, hemp, yeah. So those things are more important for me now to seek out and to find how you can integrate that into these huge big companies.
You were obviously a Solomon athlete along with Killian and Emily, and now they are expecting a bundle of
Hmm.
joy too. Do you
Yeah.
foresee play dates?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yep. Emily and I have already planned to have the baby outings, and then also for Emily and I to be able to leave the babies at home with the guys and go out and have our adventures as well. So yeah,
Amazing.
we're really excited for that.
I foresee little babies running up mountains too.
Yeah, hopefully. You never know though, do you? They
You
might be staying at home and leaving us to it.
well, the strong women that you guys are, I foresee a balance because I
Yeah.
know that you won't stand for anything less. And obviously, you've talked about the environment, you've talked about equality, and you've talked about even sustainability when it comes to creating gear. So obviously, you are, thinking about, future not only for yourself but for your children.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful thing to see, Frosty. Thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
f- uh, Finally, who are some of the athletes in the sport that you admire, be it from back in the day or and current? Who are some of the
Mhm.
people that you admire and look up to, and potentially want to beat?
Yeah, I mean, I've had such a great career with the competitive women, and when it was never about who I wanted to beat out of those women. It was always about which one of us is going to win this time. Who's done that final bit of work that's going to let them win. And so it was just always fun. I especially had fun racing with Emily and Nuria Pecas. We had some amazing battles throughout our career, which was really awesome. And they're both fantastic athletes that also have lives and interests beyond just running as well, which is very, very important. Francois Dehaene, the French runner who has his vineyard and his family and a beautiful, beautiful outlook on the world of racing because he's passionate about those races, and then taking time to rest and recover and spend with his family. And so he's always been kind of like that light behind my travel chaos, that I know that there is stability in the world out there. And then right now I think someone that's impressing me massively is Courtney
Of
Dauwalter.
course.
She's amazing. She's not about the show, she's just about the heart. And when the time gets tough for her, she loves it and she digs even deeper, and that's why she's getting these results that are just mind-blowing and super inspiring. Whether it's not about being a female necessarily, she is female, which is awesome, but that she's a person that is just crushing because she's so passionate about it. So and then there's weekly new people popping up, and we're seeing some records going down, monthly, and with all the fastest known
Absolutely.
times that are kind of going out there and keeping
Camille
us
Heron just killed it. We
right.
we had her
Exactly.
on our podcast too. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and she did it so elegantly as well, just stomped out all those miles. So yeah, it's cool to see that the bar has been raised every year, and there's this huge competition throughout the year. When I started, there used to be a season of racing, which was kind of May to October, where you would race the race season and have your break over European winter. But now that there's so many races around the world, and so many different options, people can really fine tune their training and go to these one specific races at any time of the year and dominate in it and put all their heart and soul into that one specific race. So yeah, I think we're going to see continuously performances just rising up and times getting crushed down. So yeah, it's a cool time of the sport.
And now moving on to your business, you mentioned that you have this travel and trail business. Talk to us a little more about that.
Yeah, well, again, it goes to how lucky I have been to travel to these amazing places. And so um, I had always thought it'd be wonderful to be able to share those experiences with other people. And so my husband and I decided to start off with our first trip in Madeira, because it was somewhere that we had loved and we had got engaged. And the race there is just really cool. The people are cool. The island is fascinating, and so much to do with canyoning and surfing and the cuisine there, and obviously the Madeiran wine. So we started with our trip there, and it's really our trips are not about just running because that's not who we are. We want to take people to experience the culture, to experience the environment, and to experience what that place or country has to offer. So um, it's been a really, really fun experience, and I absolutely love to see the look on people's faces when they see those things that I saw for that first time as well. So it's always like, oh yeah, I remember that, and that was so cool every time
You relive
they see
your
that.
experience vicariously through them.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's a really fun way to travel with other people and running, but also exploring.
And it must be a lot
So
of fun curating these trips too. It must be a lot of fun coming up with that.
yeah, exactly. We choose the places that we've loved and that we know the people there, and that we have found these amazing trails or experiences. So yeah, we have the one in Bhutan is one of my favorites because it's a place that I really really
It's
love.
magical.
It's really magical, yeah. And then we just try to find places around the world that are a little bit exotic or that we love traveling to, so we hope that other people do too. So Greece and Norway, and then Ecuador. We've had Costa Rica and Greenland. So yeah, we try to really be diverse and think of different places to go.
Well, it's been so wonderful talking to you, Frosty. Any final parting words before you go?
No, just thank you very much for having me. It's great to talk to you and all your people out there.
Thank you, Frosty. It was a pleasure, and thank you for giving us your time. And we are excited for your bundle of joy to come in. We'll
Yeah,
be
I
we'll
know.
be keeping track.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.